Hello, my name is Tony. Are there any male stars or actors who haven't professed at some time or other they were considered in the run-in for or offered the role of James Bond? Well, yes, obviously there are, but sometimes it doesn't feel like it. Cary Grant, Michael Gambon, Frank Sinatra, Burt Reynolds, Mel Gibson, Oliver Reed, Patrick McGoohan, Michael Caine, Mickey Rooney. Mickey fucking Rooney? The list seems endless. You can add one Clint Eastwood, for it is rumoured that in the early 70s he was also in the frame, and in interview he has suggested as much. All this strikes me as mostly bullshit. The role of Bond in the official franchise has traditionally gone to unknown second stringers or TV actors with low-key movie profiles. Major Hollywood players never been landed with the gig. Still though, it is amusing to speculate, I suppose. The Eiger Sanction was Eastwood's stab at a James Bond-type character and adventure. It's an American espionage thriller with a bolt-on Euro pulp flavour. It is based on a successful best-selling novel of the same name by Trevannion. Who the fuck is that, you quite rightly inquire? Well, until 1998, no one really knew. It was a secret, you see. Originally, popular myth had it that Trevannion was a blanket pen name for several authors, or might even be Robert Ludlum, until it was revealed to belong to one Rodney William Whitaker, an American film scholar, university professor and writer. He had another 3 aliases, but it was as Trevannion he hit the top of the bestseller list. His biggest literary and critical success was Shibumi, published in 1979, and is apparently being made into a film for release in 2022. I wouldn't hold your breath though, it may not end well. Such things very often don't. You know how some people like to be all smug and superior and knowing and tell you the novel was way better than the film? Well, I've often wondered about the validity of such statements. Books and films are, after all, two different mediums. The one is the written word which you read, whilst the other is an audio-visual experience which you watch and listen to. So how can one be measured as better than the other? Only way is if it is felt the novel succeeds at being a better novel than the film succeeds at being a film, or vice versa. Otherwise, it would be pretty much like saying that giraffe is better than that Volvo, that violin is better than that lawnmower. The comparisons don't stack up. In this case, and using that as the basis, the Eiger Sanction is comparatively a better film than the novel is a novel. I'd rather watch the movie than read the book. This is mostly because Trevannion is quite an aloof, cold and distant writer who gives the distinct impression he's slumming it by hacking out this airport paperback trash when it's really quite beneath him and his loftier artistic aspirations, whatever they may be. Feels a tiny bit like he holds his readers in some contempt, and I'm not comfortable with that. Plus, Trevannion's main character, Jonathan Hemlock, does what he does purely for monetary gain, so that he can purchase artworks on the black market for his own indulgence. Primarily, he's a selfish, mercenary kind of high-functioning sociopath. Now, if you're going to go the full Tom Ripley in a book, then you need the same sort of literary skill, sharp psychological insight, and incisive understanding of the human heart of darkness that Patricia Highsmith has to make it work. And Trevannion don't got that. He's an academic writing pulp for a buck which he feels is beneath him. He's too good for it. What a fucking snob. Now the film, although co-scripted by one Rod Whitaker, sounds faintly familiar, doesn't it? Along with 2 other nondescript hacks, sees Hemlock with the added motivation of avenging the murder of a friend who once saved his life. So although Eastwood's character is about the money and the illegal artworks, there's also another more human dimension. Combined with a wicked sense of dark humour and some nice biting and amusing interplay between the characters, it makes both Hemlock and the film a more appealing prospect than the book was and is. Just saying. In the Eiger Sanction, Clint Eastwood is Hemlock, Jonathan Hemlock, university professor of art, curator of rare paintings obtained through dubious means, famed world-class mountaineer, and paid assassin for a covert government wet work department known as C2. He's a Vietnam veteran and ex-Green Beret. That's a pretty impressive resume he's got going there. Talk about over-egging the pudding. I mean, James Bond was only a commander in the Special Boat Service, then recruited into MI6. Seems a bit sparse a background in comparison. Hemlock has retired from performing hits or sanctions, as popular C2 office vernacular has it, and doesn't climb mountains anymore. He's a lecturer in art at a university, busy avoiding the attentions of nubile female students who willingly fuck him for an upscaling grade. He gets a visit from a sleazy, dumb, bigoted, sexist dick of a C2 agent named Pope, a twitchy Gregory Walcott. The message is Mr. Dragon wants to see him, and so the story proper kicks off. Backtracking slightly, at the very start we see a shady rent-a-spy guy in Zurich get bumped off by two persons whose identities we are not privy to. We see the one killer but not the other. Remember this bit, it's important later on. So Hemlock goes to see Mr. Dragon, Thayer David, who describes himself as a pure albino who cannot stand cold or light and needs complete blood transfusions twice a year. He remains in his darkened office, lit in murky neon crimson like the boudoir of some low-rent hooker. Hemlock describes him as a bloodless freak. Not much love lost then. Agent Wormwood has been assassinated in Zurich and a microfilm for a bioweapon has gone missing. Dragon's people have identified one of the perpetrators and he wants Hemlock to pop over there and kill him in retaliation, then knock off the second culprit when identified. Hemlock agrees to one sanction only for double his usual fee and a letter from the IRS validating his illegal art collection. Seems fair to all parties, so Hemlock goes to Zurich, impersonates a gay courier as a cunning disguise. Why gay? No idea. And kicks Perp 1 through a window wherein he plummets to his death. On the plane journey back, Hemlock is approached by air hostess Jemima Brown, the phenomenally lovely Vanetta McGee. Vanetta's a black actress. This, combined with the name of her character, represents the start of a run of race-related humour that fell somewhat flat in 1975 and is likely to fall even flatter with today's audiences. I'll briefly explain why in this specific case. Aunt Jemima was a US fictional character representing the enslaved mammy archetype, latterly used as an image to sell pancake mix and other breakfast food stateside. The Aunt Jemima trademark was owned by the Quaker Oats Company, who retired it in 2020. Not very quick off the mark, were they? The name of Vanetta McGee's character is used in direct reference to the Aunt Jemima persona by Jonathan Hemlock on 2 or more occasions. Aunt Jemima has the same derogatory associations as Uncle Tom or Rastus. I don't know whether British audiences picked up on this at the time. I'm guessing mostly not, and I certainly didn't. Now I'm a little better informed, and so are you. You either accept it in terms of its historical context, or you were so offended you stop watching and go and do something else instead. Like take the knee, weep down your George Floyd t-shirt, and remind yourself racism is only okay if perpetrated by whistle-blowing cricketers of colour when they were young and directed solely at the Jewish community. So that's fine then. Me, I'm good at compartmentalising and perspective, and I quite love this film despite flaws, so on I go. Yeah, sue me. Anyway, it's not as if the Eiger Sanction isn't inclusive in the politically incorrect stakes. It takes pot shots at the physically afflicted, Native Americans, gay people and Europeans, especially the Germans, Austrians and French. So black African Americans need not feel singled out here. Like Bowie said, you're not alone. A beautiful, sexy woman approaches you on a plane. She's clearly coming on to you. On landing, she invites you to share her taxi. You take her back to your place. You cook her dinner. You show her your collection of illegal paintings in your secret basement art gallery, even though you've only just met. You chat her up by telling her you thought you'd given up rape, but you've just changed your mind. You have sex. The next morning, you wake up to find her gone. She's ransacked your safe and taken your payment for the assassination and your letter from the IRS. Even more shocking, she's a C2 agent working for Mr. Dragon. Well, who on earth would ever have seen that one coming? So Hemlock goes to see Dragon again. This time he's getting a transfusion and is informed that he can have a big whopping payday and his letter back if he takes the other sanction. Further motivation is provided when Dragon tells him that Agent Wormwood was Henri Back. Who? He was Hemlock's comrade in arms in Indochina and saved his life after they were betrayed by a third colleague, Miles Mello. Back apparently carried a wounded Hemlock to safety for 2 days. Now Eastwood was a big guy. I couldn't carry him for 2 seconds. It transpires that Mello was involved in orchestrating Back's death in Zurich, and as a bonus, Dragon informs Hemlock that he can kill him if he so wishes. Also, as luck would have it, Hemlock is the only person with the right skill set to sanction the second target. So why is that? Well, the Mark is one of the climbers on a planned goodwill ascent of the Eiger. Trouble is, no one yet knows which one he is, apart from one distinguishing feature: he walks with a limp. Limp what, you may ask? Anyway, Hemlock will join the climb as the American representative, the original candidate having had an accident, coincidentally like. He will ascertain the identity of the killer and bump him off. This is getting complicated now. Still, with such a tempting offer on the table, how could anyone in their right mind refuse? Hemlock travels to a climbing school in the Arizona a desert run by his old friend and fellow climber Ben Bowman, George Kennedy. It's a sort of hunting lodge resort hideaway for swinging singles. He needs to get in shape, and Ben assigns George a Native American chick as his personal trainer. George is hot, but she's a hard taskmaster who doesn't speak. Cue a quip about striking back at the white man, and screw Marlon Brando. You gotta love it for what it is. Hemlock's old adversary, Miles Mello, turns up with a muscle-bound bodyguard and little dog in tow. The dog tries to hump Hemlock's leg. Miles is a gay gentleman and his dog is called... I don't want to, but I feel I have to say it because that's his name in the film.
His name is, Faggot.
That's cute.
The dog is called Faggot. Now, Miles is played by Jack Cassidy, father of David, and he was reportedly bisexual in the real world. And he is incredible fun, turning a flatly unsympathetic role into an absolute showcase of urbane gay stereotyping that is utterly mesmerizing. Every movement, expression, mannerism, and affectation represents a performance in itself. He really does light up the screen and manages to make a wholly despicable character strangely sympathetic. Cry homophobia all you want, doesn't alter the fact that here Cassidy is a real class act and is clearly enjoying himself, pulling out all the stops and then some. Miles wants Hemlock to abandon his quest to kill him and teases that he knows the identity of the man Hemlock is to sanction. He will tell him if Hemlock agrees to leave him in peace. Hemlock responds by beating the shit out of Miles' bodyguard Dwight. So, no deal then. Hemlock and Bowman, in one of the standout sequences in the film, scale a towering finger of rock in Monument Valley, known as the Totem. It's 650 feet high with an 18-foot diameter. We'll come back to this later. Miles coerces George, who is now sleeping with Hemlock, to try and kill him. When this fails, Hemlock draws Miles and Dwight out into the desert, where he blasts Dwight with a shotgun and takes Miles 500 miles to the middle of nowhere and leaves him to die. What size fuel tank does that bloody Jeep have? He does, however, rescue Faggot. The dog, I mean, who ironically chooses not to remain with his treacherous master. If I remember correctly, this doesn't happen in the book. Faggot stays with Miles and Miles eats him before dying. Some sort of poetic justice there. American moviegoers are none too keen on animals buying the farm. People, that's a whole different matter. So the film clearly takes this into account. Now we flip to Switzerland and the Eiger. The rest of the movie focuses on the climbing team and the climb itself. It's xenophobia time as we meet the eager and rash Austrian like a grown-up Von Trapp child, the cuckolded impotent Frenchman Toulouse-Lautrec with legs, and the dictatorial Nazi-light German SS officer with Python's climbing axe and Eiger route map. Hemlock and Bowman take the piss out of them. Matters are complicated further by the German fucking the Frenchman's unfaithful wife and Hemlock still having no idea which one he's supposed to kill. Pope shows up in the most appalling check jacket ever seen outside of clown school to compromise Hemlock's cover out of spite and to make some unpleasant racist comments about Jemima, for which, amongst other things, Hemlock gives him a good, satisfying kick-in. Jemima turns up because she's in love with Jonathan and wants to support him, and Bowman is the ground man coordinating the climb. And thus the climb begins. Hemlock knows that whoever the target is, he knows who Hemlock is and why he's there. As the weather deteriorates, Ben and Jemima can only watch through Ben's telescope as the climb quickly devolves into disaster and death and events play out. In the end, Hemlock is the sole survivor of the expedition, and Dragon's assumption is he chose the expedient scorched earth policy of killing all three of his fellow mountaineers to be on the safe side. So all's well and good. Who the target actually is may come as a surprise, but most viewers will have worked it out in advance, and who you thought it is probably is who it is. Should you watch it though? I'll help you decide. Firstly, the casual racism, homophobia, xenophobia, and other socio-political elements present may put certain people off. That's fair enough. I can only tell you that I don't believe any of it was intended as malicious, rather being thoughtlessly typical of the language and stylings of many of the movies of that era. It reflects the times, and I doubt that Eastwood, who also directed, and is an old-school libertarian politically, saw it as anything other than a case of make-believe characters doing and saying make-believe things in a make-believe world. If people can't tell the difference or don't wish to experience such things, then they should probably give it a miss. What else would you be missing into the bargain? Well, some of the best camera work and cinematography ever committed to film. Frank Stanley, who worked with Eastwood previously on Breezy, Magnum Force and Thunderbolt and Lightfoot, provides soaring, dizzying, sweeping visuals, capturing some eye-wateringly beautiful location vistas. The aerial photography and long-shot work on the totem climb is especially impressive. When the camera pulls back from Eastwood and Kennedy, sat 650 foot above the ground on a spire of rock 18 foot in diameter, the sense of vertigo is palpable. Add to this some of the most daring and immersive climbing visuals captured on the Eiger itself, and it is indeed a great feast for the senses. Eastwood wanted the climbing scenes to be as realistic as possible, and to this end he trained up and did all his own mountaineering stunts. This was a dangerous environment, and during filming on the Eiger, climber David Knowles was tragically killed in a rockfall. Apparently, Eastwood had been stood where he was only minutes earlier. John Williams turns in a superb score, the main theme being addictively memorable. It will stay with you. The script has flaws, and one is an uneven sense of style and tone. There is flamboyance and hackneyed fantasy affectations, with Dragon framed as one of those bizarre Bond villain type of characters. Physically afflicted, rasping away in his office come medical treatment facility lair, tended by a nurse called Miss Cerberus. Cerberus being a multi-headed hound in Greek mythology who guards the gates of the underworld, Hades, hell. When you add in the skewed religious parody of naming a dumb, bigoted, racist pope, along with saddling a beautiful modern black woman with the moniker Jemima as some sort of ironic ethnic joke, it all seems to belong to some distorted comic book universe. This jars a little with the cool realism of the action in Zurich, Arizona and on the Eiger. On the one hand, the Eiger Sanction seems to want to be a serious espionage thriller. The score, cinematography, set pieces all point to and support this. Yet on the other, it wants to take on board some of the more mindless stylistic tropes of the Hollywood Bond knockoff flicks like Matt Helm and Flint. The writers seem to be trying to be clever, satirical and witty whilst not being hip, insightful and clued in enough or skilled enough in screenwriting terms to pull it off. We can be smarter than Bond? Well, on this evidence you clearly can't. Eastwood's handling of the action sequences is sure-footed and super competent, and gives us, without a shadow of a doubt, some of the very best in-your-face climbing sequences of any mountain climbing movie. Compare with Rennie Harlin's 1993 Stallone vehicle Cliffhanger, and the thing that sets the Eiger Sanction apart is the omission of fake-looking studio-bound sequences, unconvincing model work, and computer-simulated props. Cliffhanger is a fine action adventure, but it can't match or catch Eiger for gutsy realism. As time goes by, the Eiger Sanction, especially the Blu-ray version, which enhances visual detail and therefore invites more intense scrutiny, looks the newer, fresher and way more authentic of the two, just is. You can forgive me or not for finding the Eiger Sanction to be an enduring and entertaining slice of dynamic and enthralling cinema. I like some of the cynical humour, the relationship and interplay between Eastwood and Kennedy's crude and abusive responses to the peripheral characters at the Eiger Hotel. Vanetta McGee is lovely to look at and manages a nice mix of both feminine confidence and vulnerability. Eastwood's Hemlock is more relatable with a more attractive personality than the character in Trevanion's book. His patented anti-hero persona probably helps. Gregory Walcott's tick-afflicted Pope is a suitably loathsome figure of fun, and as I said previously, Jack Cassidy is a complete revelation. If I were throwing a party, he'd be on the guest list, if only he hadn't died in a fire in 1976. I read one critic describe it or write it off really as Dirty Harry up a mountain. Well, it's not that. Whilst it doesn't represent Eastwood's best work as actor or director, it's a good solid addition to his back catalogue. The stunt work and climbing sequences alone make it a worthwhile and unique experience, and Eastwood fans or fans of mountain climbing movies generally will want to cast an eye. Again, it's a personal favourite of mine, which means little in the scheme of things I know, but people like what they like for all sorts of reasons. What's wrong with that? Sure, someone's going to tell me at some point. Thanks for your time and attention, for which I am forever in your debt. You know what to do next if you want to do it, and if you don't, then don't. See you in the spring. Threat of the day. Hang tough, pilgrims, or climb every mountain, punks.
As an opening line, it wasn't meant to be offensive.
You say you don't mind, but your smile looks so defensive. And I go in circles, stuttering, tongue-tied. Can't shake the feeling that rises from inside. You look like an old girlfriend I danced with once at the world's end. What am I to do to reconnect with you when you look like she used to? You look like she used to. You look like she used to do. What I'm trying to say, it wasn't meant to sound disjointed. You say it's okay, but your eyes scream disappointed. And I don't recover, faltering, broke up. No, there's no point in getting my hopes up. She wasn't as beautiful, as wonderful as you. And now it's you that's sitting there. Once a heart has been broken in two, it can't help but contrast and compare. You look like an old girlfriend I danced with once at the world's end. What am I to do